Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Once you decide that human beings are gods with the power to rewrite history, biology, and nature, the power to shape reality itself, once you decide that, there's no reason to stop at sex changes. Transgenderism is certainly faddish at the moment. None of us can stop talking about it. But men magically morphing into women is not the final stage of anything. Instead, it's the first of many similar movements that are on the way inevitably. And the few visionaries who have grasped this obvious truth weirdly have not been welcomed by Blue America. They have been mocked and derided, as prophets always are. A few years ago, for example, a blue-eyed blonde woman from Montana called Rachel Dolezal declared that she was black because she decided that she was black. Blackness was Rachel Dolezal's lived experience. But she was not greeted as a liberator. She was almost immediately booed off the stage, and then she disappeared. And yet, tellingly, none of the people yelling at Rachel Dolezal ever explained why she couldn't be black. Why not? In this country, you can change your sex, but not your race? Really? How does that work? What species of science are we talking about here? It was not a defensible argument. And so over time, like all indefensible arguments, it will collapse. Someday, the New York Times will give Rachel Dolezal its coveted Glass Ceiling Award for her courage in the face of prejudice. That will happen. But before it does, we'd like to highlight some of the early adopters of our new civic religion, where each of us is God of the universe with utter dominion over nature. These are the trailblazers, the pathfinders, the Daniel Boones of progressive identity politics. One of them is a man called Justin Pearson. Pearson has been in the news recently for helping to facilitate an insurrection at the Tennessee State House. You may have seen him. But you may not know what Justin Pearson was like before his transition. Back in 2016, Justin Pearson was an earnest young student at Bowdoin, the whitest college in the whitest state in America, a place that costs $60 grand a year for no obvious reason. A rich kid's school. Here's what Justin Pearson looked like then as he ran for president of student government.
I'm Justin J. Pearson, and I'm running for president of BSG. There are a few reasons that we're running this campaign this year. One has to do with representation. How can we represent all voices in a conversation? I want to bring together different voices, dissenting voices, voices that may be more liberal or more conservative, in order that we can reach a point of sort of the radical middle, where conversation and dialogue happens and growth happens. Join the People's Pearson campaign, and let's chart ourselves to a better future.
I want to bring everyone together, said Justin Pearson, in a voice that if you closed your eyes, you could easily imagine coming from a suburban orthodontist. Justin Pearson wasn't white, that's probably how he got into Bowdoin in the first place, but he did a fantastic impression of it. What a nice young man. Has he considered the apprenticeship program at Citibank? That was the old Justin Pearson before his transition. Here he is now on the floor of the Tennessee State House.
All hope seemed to be lost. Representatives were thrown out of the State House. Democracy seemed to be at its end. Seemed like the NRA and gun lobbyists might win. But oh, that was good news for us. I don't know how long this Saturday in the state of Tennessee might last. But oh, we have good news, folks. We've got good news that Sunday always comes.
Justin Pearson has a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, everyone will do exactly what he wants or else face indictment by the Department of Justice. Justin Pearson has changed quite dramatically, as you can see. He transitioned from a crypto white kid into the modern incarnation of Martin Luther King Jr. himself. It's remarkable, really. But he's not alone in that. You see this all the time. Everybody in the Democratic Party wants to be Martin Luther King at this point. Even Joe Biden, who during the famous March on Washington was enjoying the many benefits of life as a college student in a racially segregated state. Now, he's MLK. They all are. But you got to ask yourself, as long as we're mimicking civil rights leaders who died almost 60 years ago, why not some variety? You never see politicians transition into, say, Malcolm X. Why is that? Maybe because Malcolm X didn't talk like a sharecropper. He spoke dignified standard English. He wasn't running a shakedown racket to fleece guilty white liberals. Malcolm X had self-respect, so he despised guilty white liberals, and he said so. He believed in self-improvement. He knew who the enemy was. So maybe it's not surprising that Malcolm X is not a popular transition choice in 2023. Al Sharpton, by contrast, is increasingly popular, especially now that he's skinny and has a paying job. Sandy Cortez of Westchester recently pulled off a double transition. Not only did she change sexes, Al Sharpton identifies as a man, but races as well. Here she is unveiling her new self in front of Sharpton's own National Action Network.
I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with working retail, folding clothes for other people to buy. There is nothing wrong with preparing the food that your neighbors will eat. There is nothing wrong with driving the buses that take your family to work.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. In other words, yo, my brother, sup? That's not bad for a girl who grew up in an all-white suburb in leafy Westchester County as the daughter of the president of an architectural firm. But don't mention any of that. That's dead naming. These days, she'd like a gin and juice with salsa and frijoles, because Sandy Cortez doesn't just transition once, she keeps transitioning. She's a cutting-edge shapeshifter who collects identities the way Imelda Marcos did shoes. So she started life as a privileged white girl, then became a middle-aged black man engaged in the civil rights movement, and then in October, she transformed effortlessly into a Latinx cartoon character. Watch this. Okay, I cut you. You may call that fraudulent. She calls it transitioning. They don't talk like that in Westchester County. But she learned this from the very best. Barack Obama paved the way. Obama grew up with his white mother and white grandparents from Kansas in an apartment in Honolulu, a city that has approximately 0 black people. Then he moved to Indonesia, then California and New York. But at some point, Barack Obama decided he didn't want to be any of the things he actually was, so he transitioned. He became, because you can do this now, an African-American Baptist pastor from Chicago with deep roots in Mississippi. Here's Barack Obama post-transition in December.
If John Lewis, even in his 70s, wasn't tired, I got no excuses. I can't be tired. If the men and women who had to endure the sting of discrimination, the smack of belly clubs, weren't tired. If the folks who had to fight those early fights, those were the tough fights for union rights and voting rights and gay rights and women's rights. If they didn't get tired, you can't be tired.
Barack Obama is sick and tired of being sick and tired. It was the smack of the billy clubs in Honolulu that did it. It was the fire hoses and snarling German shepherds at Harvard Law School. At some point, Obama crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge of his mind and transitioned into Ralph Abernathy, except an atheist and much thinner. But Hillary Clinton was there first. She transitioned when he didn't even know what the word meant. And in some ways, Hillary made an even longer journey. She was identified by an obstetrician at birth as the daughter of an executive from the suburban Midwest. But inside, she always knew she was very different from that. She was trapped inside a body that wasn't hers. But it wasn't until 2007 that Hillary Clinton finally mustered the courage to identify as what she was all along, a politically aware gospel singer from the segregated South. Here she is on the Chitlin Circuit in Alabama.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
Performing tonight, ladies and gentlemen, at Constitution Hall. Joe Biden actually was born in a slave state, and as we mentioned, for the first nearly 30 years of his life, enjoyed all the many perks of living in a Jim Crow city. But that's not a story that audiences are interested in hearing a lot about at this point. So Joe Biden did what we are all now allowed to do in modern America. He erased his former identity. You saw this recently with the trans admiral. He declared it never happened. You can't know what happened. It's a dead name. And he transitioned into something else. So Joe Biden still grew up in a segregated state, but now he was the one at the back of the bus, feeling the thump of the billy club. the sting of the fire hose. Joe Biden is now black. Watch.
A senator from Florida going after Medicare and Social Security? I tell you what, I don't know where, as they say in Southern, don't know where y'all been. Hot damn, boy.
Hot damn. Hot damn. And at no time in his life did Joe Biden ever support segregated schools in Delaware, contrary to what Kamala Harris told us during the Democratic debates last time. Kamala Harris has forgotten all about that because it never happened. And in Kamala Harris's case, there's a whole palette of identities to choose from. So here you have someone who is the daughter, technically, or was, who was identified at birth as the daughter of a Jamaican college professor and an Indian college professor who grew up in Canada, in Montreal, Quebec. So actually, Kamala Harris can be essentially anything she wants. And 2 years ago, she transitioned and became a baguette-eating, beret-wearing, bicycle-riding French lady. Here she is.
With us in government, we campaign with the plan. Uppercase T, uppercase P, the plan. And then the environment is such that we're expected to defend the plan.
In France, we call it fromage and speak in broken English. It's too bad the Ukrainian accent is so hard to master because a lot of these people would already have transitioned into refugees from Kyiv. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson Tonight.